Can I just ask you first, Mr Corbyn, what sense did you get from Michel Barnier today about the prospects of any deal being done with the UK?
What I got from him was a very strong message that he's very worried about the danger of no deal, the deal collapsing or no deal, and Britain leaving without any agreement at all, and therefore damage to jobs, supply chains, and many other things. And he was very concerned about that, and he asked us what our views on it are. He was obviously aware in advance of the letter I'd sent to the Prime Minister and our proposals. And I do believe that the proposals we've sent are something on which we could negotiate a deal with the European Union, which would give us a customs union, market access and protection of rights. And I think that there is a way forward there. Theresa May's deal got the support of barely a third of all MPs, and she seems to me to be running down the clock by saying, well, it's my deal, which has already been rejected very heavily in Parliament, biggest ever defeat for a government, or no deal, which was rejected by Parliament on a narrow majority, saying MPs didn't want no deal. And so we'll take those issues back to Parliament next week. We don't know what she's going to bring to Parliament yet.
You're opposed to no deal. You're opposed to the Prime Minister's deal.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think will happen in that case? What are you backing? Are you saying there has to be a delay, or are you saying there has to be a second referendum?
There has to be an agreement with the European Union that customs union is something we could negotiate.
Prime Minister's not going to go for that.
No,
she doesn't want a customs union.
She said
but
all
you're
along,
not negotiating. That's my point. Is so what do you think is likely to happen?
Well, I'm not sure she's negotiating either, actually, because she can't get anything she negotiates back through Parliament. You'd have thought, if you bring a deal back to Parliament and you lose by the biggest ever majority a government's been defeated by, you'd get the message that this is not acceptable. She seems to be trying to bring the thing back and back again and try and browbeat her own party into supporting it. Well, it doesn't look to me like it's working, and it certainly isn't convincing anybody else.
What's acceptable to you, a delay to Brexit or a second referendum?
Well, those aren't necessarily the choices. The first issue is taking no deal off the table. The second one is having a credible relationship with the European Union, which I believe is what we've set out. And our proposals, which I put to Parliament, were that these could be put to a referendum in the future on the basis of the arrangements that have been made with the European Union.
Do you think a delay is inevitable? Many people around here do. Speaking to European diplomats, for example, they agree.
Many have said that to me, but it can't be a very long delay because one gets into all sorts of legal weeds a bit later on down the line.
Do you think it's likely there'll be a delay?
It's quite. I would have thought, because of the Prime Minister's dilatory behaviour on this and the way that she delayed putting her vote to Parliament in December, when she had already agreed with me that that would be the date that Parliament would vote. It didn't vote in December, and it voted more than 5 weeks later.
Just for the just to remove all doubt, if the Prime Minister gets the concessions she wants, is there, under any circumstances, would you back the Prime Minister's deal just to get Brexit done?
I don't want to support and will not support any deal that damages jobs, damages living standards, or leads to us losing the ability to sell our goods to Europe. But also, I won't back any deal that ends up turning Britain into some kind of offshore tax haven outside Europe. I want us to recognise what happened, the referendum, but also recognise the reality of so many people's lives that are dependent on trade with Europe.
Did Michel Barnier today give you any sense that there was going to be a deal struck with the British government? Because if there isn't, we really are looking at no deal or a delay or a second referendum. You don't seem keen on a second referendum, if I may say so.
Well, our party conference put a series of options which we've run through. We haven't run through them all yet, but there were we thought the best option was actually to hold a general election, since this government does not command a majority in Parliament, is frightened or nervous of bringing anything to Parliament. I think we should have a general election. Now, I don't think the Prime Minister is going to agree with that. But if she can't survive in Parliament, we cannot go on having an administration that cannot get its business through Parliament, cannot deal with the most fundamental issue of the day, which is our future relations with Europe, then surely it's time to have for people to have a say on who their government is.
And do you think by sounding more positive about a second referendum. That might prevent more people leaving the party, because we've seen MPs resigning from the Labour Party this week.
I'm very sorry that anyone's resigned from the Labour Party. It's not what I want, it's not what I wish. Our party put forward a policy in the last general election, very strong policies on redistribution of power and wealth, equality and investment within our society. I was very proud of that manifesto. We were all elected on it, and I think we should stick together to put those views to Parliament at every opportunity we have, but also to take it forward to a new election campaign. Our party has more than 500,000 members who are very determined to make sure that we put up a strong case and win a general election.
To those MPs that have left the Labour Party, and perhaps there are more yet to make the same decision, are you saying to them they're never welcome back in the party, whatever the circumstances?
Well, look, they've left the party, they've made their own decisions. I'm very unclear as to what policies they're putting forward, but except I hear very differing policies over the last few days from all of them.
Are they welcome back, ever?
If they apply to come back in the future, obviously we can look at it. But listen...
You don't sound very keen on them coming back.
They resigned from the party in a blaze of publicity, and I regret that, and I hope others will think, look, the Labour Party was created by very brave people to bring about social justice in Britain. I've spent my life in the Labour Party, as have many others. There are times when we all agree or disagree with every dot and comma of Labour Party policy, but we remain in the party because it's the vehicle to bring about social change in Britain.
Sounds like they're not welcome back at any time.
Let's see what happens and see how people go on. But I tell you this, the issues of people's livelihoods, living standards, food banks, rough sleeping, insecurity, overwhelming debt of people coming out of higher education, those issues are far more important than the worries about one individual. They're what we exist for as a party.
Do you think that... what do you think was the main reason for people leaving the party? Was it anti-Semitism or Brexit?
You have to ask those that have resigned, those small number of MPs that have gone. But I just say this. Anti-Semitism is not acceptable in any form whatsoever in any part of our society, including my party. I appointed Shami Chakrabarti to undertake a review of policies and procedures, which she did. I then asked the party to appoint a legal counsel, which we've done. I asked them to expand the size of our investigation processes, which has been done, and some people have resigned from the party because they've been accused of anti-Semitic behaviour. Some have been expelled and some have been suspended. But we also have an education programme because I think that is very important.
Back to the resignations. Do you see Ian Austin as still being one of your MPs?
As I'm aware, Ian Austin is a Labour MP as of this moment.
And the fact that you've called for by-elections in the constituencies, and the fact that you've called for by-elections in the constituencies of those MPs who have left, that is causing some concern. The deputy leader of the party, Tom Watson, called that knee-jerk and spiteful. What do you say to your own deputy leader?
I don't behave in a knee-jerk or spiteful way. I simply say that if you've been elected to Parliament on a manifesto for the many, not the few, which you were in the general election, and you then resign from the party and say you're doing something else because you're an individual who happens to be an MP, surely you owe something to the people that put you there. And that's why I said, many have raised this point as a democratic argument, not necessarily Labour, lots of other parties when people have resigned. If you resign, have a by-election and decide whether you or somebody else will be the MP for that area. Surely that's democratic.
Do you regret the timing of Derek Hatton being accepted back into the Labour Party at the same time?
He's been suspended.
He's been suspended now. Do you think he should be expelled?
He's been suspended and it will be investigated. I don't make those decisions. That's done independently of me.
What would you like to happen?
It's done independently of me. They'll decide.
But do you have a view?
Listen, the whole point of having an independent procedure within the party of examining cases is that you hear the case, you hear the evidence, you make your decision and make your recommendation. I want to let them do that first.
Was it regrettable, given the timing of MPs leaving, that Derek Hatton was accepted back into the fold at the same time? Or
well,
was it...
that was coincidence. There was no planning involved in that at all. He is being investigated for various things that he said and sent out, and that'll be looked at independently of me.
You support that investigation?
Of course, because that's why I've set up this whole process of having independent investigations. I don't think leaders should be dictators. I think leaders should be people that gives parties processes and brings people together.
And should George Galloway be allowed back into the Labour Party?
Well, he's not a Labour Party member.
Should he be allowed back?
Well, he hasn't even applied to join, so the issue doesn't apply.
He wrote to the General Secretary asking for his expulsion to be overturned. What should the reply be?
Well, the reply is that he stood as a candidate against official Labour candidates at the last general election, and the normal process is you can't apply for membership for 5 years after that.
And so back to Brexit. Let me just get this straight, because I think people are very confused about what will happen. There's a huge amount of uncertainty for jobs, for businesses,
and people are
as you point out.
And people are very worried.
Very worried.
I talk to businesses all the time, and they are very, very worried.
So you're opposed to no deal. You're opposed to Theresa May's deal. You're lukewarm on a second referendum?
Well, what I've said is that our proposals on the customs union, market access and protection of rights are, I believe, achievable, could gain a majority in Parliament, and are certainly something that we could negotiate, albeit in a strong way, with the European Union. And our proposals are that those should then be considered for a public vote after that. The point is, we've got to stop no deal and make sure we do protect those jobs and protect those rights that we've got that have come through EU law. But actually I want to go further. I want to go much further on workers' rights, consumer protection and environmental protections.
Did you vote leave?
No. I voted Remain. I campaigned for Remain. I travelled the length and breadth of the country on a platform of Remain and reform. I didn't think the European Union was perfect. I don't think anybody in the European Union thinks it's perfect, but I campaigned for Remain and reform, from Perranporth Beach in Cornwall to the fish market in Aberdeen.
Final question. Why do you think that a delay to Brexit is now likely?
Well, unless the Prime Minister can come up with something credible over the next few days which she can put to Parliament and gain support for it, then the danger is that we're stuck with either the choice of her deal or no deal. That's not a choice I accept, not a choice anybody else accepts. But there cannot be any ad nauseum delay. It could only be very short if there was a delay. I'm not calling for that delay. What I'm calling for is the Prime Minister to stop running down the clock in order to appease a small group of her backbenchers and be serious about these negotiations.
And the Carl Wilson amendment, would you back that?
Well, it hasn't been placed yet.
If it is?
It's not been placed yet, and I'm not sure in what form it will be placed. The amendments we're putting will be the ones that we craft ourselves, which will be around the points that I've already made.